You're on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Welcome Facebook Live and our audience on YouTube. Thanks for being here tonight. We have got two new episodes headed your way. First one out of the gate. We'll talk about that in a second. My co-host tonight, Ike McFadden, is joining me. We also got producer Pete Haviland on the line as well. Ike, how is it going in Tennessee?
Well, it was going fine until I heard Pete was on the line, and in that case, we're hunkering down for a show, I guess.
You never know what you're going to get when Pete's around. You know, sometimes he gives it his full performance. Sometimes he just kind of phones it in, but we'll see how it goes tonight. Pete, are you with us tonight?
I am here, and I am not going to phone it in.
Okay.
And why do we have that white guy again over there?
Yeah, well, Ike is here because he's one of the co-hosts. We've talked about this. Yeah.
So you're saying you're not even going to bother phoning it in?
No, I am not going to bother to phone it in.
Okay, so that kind of tells you where the show's going to go. Hey, we've got a great guest for you in this first episode. Pete, I think you know our guest very well. You've been associated with him for many years.
Yes, I have. Keith Age is a very, very good person. I learned a lot from him over the years. I think I've known him for probably about 20 some odd years.
Well, you know, we're going to be talking with Keith about, he's based in Louisville, and we'll be talking with him about the Louisville Ghost Hunter Society and many other things through his long career. We're talking ghost hunter, but he is not just the ghost hunter. He is the rock and roll ghost hunter, Pete, or Ike, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. Keith Age has been called the legendary rock and roll ghost hunter for good reason, mostly because in addition to 30 years of experience in paranormal research, he's also a professional musician for quite a bit longer than that. So he's got a lot of experience all over the place. He's also the founder and president of the Louisville Ghost Hunter Society, which was formed in 1996 and has over 4,000 members across the world. You've likely heard Keith on hundreds of radio stations internationally and speaking at lots and lots of conventions annually. He's the host and associate producer of the Booth Brothers Spooked TV, which is an acclaimed documentary series.
That's right. The titles of the shows include Spooked, Ghost of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Children of the Grave, The Possessed, The Haunted Boy, The Secret Diary of the Exorcist Case. We're going to talk about all those and many more. Children of the Grave, we'll hear about that as well. All of which air on the Sci-Fi Channel. He's been on the Sci-Fi Channel. He and the Booth Brothers are working on several new and exciting documentaries. And as well, he's producing and directing some of his own upcoming documentaries as well. Keith Age, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
There we go. There we go. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to ask you, because it's interesting when we talk to people who are paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunters. They always have an experience that bring them into that. I understand you're a musician, and I know you've got a story maybe tied into music with ghosts. What was your first experience and what intrigued you with the paranormal?
When I was 16, I was on the road, the Coliseums and stuff like that. This is back in the 70s. So kind of dating myself here. And got off the road, met this girl, dated her for a while, and she'd never take me over to her house to meet her mom and dad. And I kind of figured it was because I had the rock and roll look, the hair down to my butt and the black leather and the full beard and everything else, 70s rock and roller. And finally got to go over there one night. And I asked her, I said, your parents seem really cool. What's going on? She said, it's because we have a ghost in the house and he doesn't like mine or my sister's boyfriends. So I was like, yeah, let's go smoke another one, let's go have a good time here. And all night long, I taunted this thing. And we were sitting on a couch, and you could see down the hallway to the master bedroom, and there was a mirror with our reflection in it. And the reflection, something kept walking in front of it. And I'd go down there and check it out, and there's nobody in the room. So by the end of the night, me being young, dumb, and stupid and calling this thing out, I went to kiss her goodnight inside the living room at the front door. And next thing I know, something grabbed hold of my left arm, just power. And it threw me backwards through the front door and through the screen door. And I landed about 6 feet out in the front yard. And I just thought, man, that was so cool. Do it again. let's do it. So I've been hooked ever since.
Have you come across anything as violent as that or did that experience happen any time other than that?
Oh yeah, I've been thrown through a wall, and thank God the wall was deteriorating. I've had plenty of stuff thrown at me and bust my head open. Even had a chandelier drop on us once, and I got about 45 stitches out of it.
Wow.
So, Keith, let me ask you this. You mentioned before we were getting on the show about being in Louisville. You're part of the Louisville Ghost Society. I was in Louisville not too long ago. That's in Kentucky, for those of you who don't know that place. My impression was, and here's my question, is a lot of old places in the U.S., like Louisville, that I believe is a port city. I mean, I know it's on a river. Is it the Tennessee River?
It was a river city, yeah.
Does that have, do you see that kind of theme coming up a lot in, are you more likely to run into strange stuff in places like that? As opposed to
there's all kinds of different places here in Louisville. There are a lot of good things downtown because it's all older buildings. And, matter of fact, a lot of stuff is on History Row and National History Row Society. And there are some cool things. There's still a lot of that double-edged sword, that people don't want to cross over, but everybody has a ghost tale. My cousin's brother, sister, aunt, somebody did something. And of course, we've got Waverly Hills, which, I was there for five and a half years, when it first opened up. And there's some really cool places. A lot of the downtown houses are cool. The Riverport area, the original area, the river has actually overtaken it, and there's still some really cool downtown buildings, along with the hospital that's down there that they've just revamped, and they're still having problems with it. So,
do you? Going back to the whole water theme, do you think that it's some type of, we've talked to some experts on the show that have alluded to the fact that maybe water may have some type of connection to the paranormal or hauntings or ghost activity. Do you buy into that? What do you think is causing all of this?
Well, have you ever gone near a river, a big river, and set your EMF meter there? What happens to the EMF meter? Most of the time, it just pegs. All right, that means it's picking up EMF, electromagnetic field readings. And with water is power, because it's constantly moving and flowing. And so there's probably got to be something to it. I'm not a scientist, never claimed to be, but that's like you go to Wilder, Kentucky, Bobby Mackey's, which sits right on the Licking River. I mean, literally, you can walk out the back door, walk into the Licking River. And it's one of 7 rivers in the country where it runs opposite of what it should be. And, inside the building, it's so strong. What's going on? Why is it so strong inside a building 50 feet away? So, there's got to be something to it.
So, Pete, let me bring you in on this. I mean, you've got some kind of technical background in this kind of thing. Is this something you've seen as well in terms of whatever devices you use? Do you find this kind of thing around water, around ports? Can you give us some kind of background on why, if that happens, and why you think it happens?
Well, a lot of it, I'm hearing double me. There we go. Okay. A lot of places, the history can prove a haunting. Okay. And when you're talking about river ports and stuff, those places are usually around 200 years old. So not only is it the river that's going on and got some activity in paranormal field, the electromagnetic fields, but you've got the history of the land that it's actually attached to. We have what's called the Belle of Louisville here. It's an old steamboat paddle boat that supposedly is haunted by a young man that was killed on the ship, but until I have Bob the Ghost walk up and go, "Hi, I'm Bob," I don't even call these things ghosts anymore. It's some type of phenomena we have just scratched the surface on. It could be some little green men on some far off planet going, "Yeah, watch this."
Well, what does this button do? Let me ask you this, Keith. Let's talk about your series, the Spooked series. I want to mention a few titles, and maybe you can give us some background on them. The Haunted Boy: The Real Story Behind The Exorcist. Now, is this the story behind the boy that inspired the Exorcist movie? Of course, in the movie, it was Linda Blair, but the real story alludes to the fact that it was a boy involved with this.
Yeah, this was all about Roland Doe. We actually had copies of the priest's journal, and the real journal is locked up in the Vatican, and they wouldn't let us come look at it. But we had copies of it, and it's really interesting. A lot of, like you said, a lot of people think it had to do with the little girl. It was actually about a boy that started out in Missouri, for God's sake.
Wow.
Not in Washington, but. We were the first ones to actually go there and film, and got some really interesting stuff. So, it's actually about the boy, and plus we filmed a lot of other places that were part of the story with him. And what's cool is all of the furniture that the boy had in his room at the Alexian Brothers Hospital is under lock and key by the Army.
By the Army.
By the Army.
Wow.
They threatened to shoot us if we didn't leave. We just asked if we could see it, and it got real hostile real quick. And a lot of people, the movers who moved all that furniture to the, think of Indiana Jones. Remember at the ending where they got that great big warehouse? That's what we were dealing with. And all the movers and stuff, several have died. But while moving, a lot of them got hurt. One of them got his leg broke. One got crushed. Just all these various different things.
Are there investigations, and I imagine this happens all the time, say you pick up an EVP, which is an electronic voice phenomena, or if you have a camera going, do you find a lot of times that you pick up things that you don't see with the naked eye or hear with your ears, or do you witness some of the things that are picked up at the same time on a recording?
It's both, but mostly it's you go back later and you hear it when you recorded it and you're listening to over it, you're reviewing everything. But most of the stuff that you get that you hear, had a real good friend of mine who had never been on a ghost hunt before. We were in here, a little town in Cynthiana in Kentucky, and we were at the Ross Opera House, and he was upstairs. He had a set of headphones on and a recorder attached to him, and he's just sitting there just making conversation with somebody. The next thing you know, he hears it, or he didn't hear it, but everybody else in the room heard it. They called his name.
Wow.
And he had been introduced as a different name, stage name. And it actually called his real name. So he come flying down. He goes, "Play this back. Let me hear it. Play it back. Sure enough, it caught it."
So let me ask you this, Keith. I'm sort of the skeptic around here. Do you, of all the stuff you've seen, do you genuinely feel that this is otherworldly material? These are ghosts. These are apparitions. That this is something outside of people's own psychology, or what do you make of all this after seeing it and studying it for so long?
I am also a huge skeptic. It takes a lot for me to say, okay, something's going on here. Fear, adrenaline, and paranoia go a long way to make a haunt to happen. And those are usually your first things you check off the box. And because if somebody thinks something is haunted, it's haunted by God. Or if it's got a demon there, And, like I said, I don't even call these ghosts anymore for the simple fact it's a phenomena that we're capturing, but we have no idea why or how we're capturing it right now or what's generating it. Why does sometimes it's very intelligent reacting or sounding, or at other times it's like a broken record, just keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. Why does it happen either way? Or something just has enough power to, slam doors and turn off lights or throw you down the hallway, and those are rare things that happen like that. But yeah, I've had them happen before. And no, I wasn't getting up here and poking the bear. I don't believe in doing that. You know,
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What does that? You use the phrase "poking the bear." What do you mean by that?
antagonizing whatever's there. I won't get up here, and I did that. That's how I got involved in this stuff.
Yeah.
And I ended up got thrown out to the front door. So I kind of learned my lesson when I was 16. You know, you don't get up here and say, "Oh, come on, show me what you can do. Prove to me you're here. Do something." Because it's more than likely, if there is something there and it is powerful enough to do something, it will do something. And like I said, we don't know what this is. The best thing, like I said, I was telling you, it could be some little green men going, "Watch this." This could happen. We don't know.
Well, Keith, you brought up a good point. If you don't go poking the bear or trying to antagonize spirits or otherworldly entities, we've talked with a person in the past who's worked on exorcisms, and he's a medical professional. He's worked with priests, the Catholic Church, and he had told us with most of the cases of people who are possessed, most of them, he said these were people who were looking to make contact with demonic entities. One woman, he said, was a satanic or Satan worshiper, and she was one of his most famous cases. Is that something you find if you go looking hard enough to find something, you're going to find it, and maybe it's not going to be that good?
Yeah, normally. And also when you're talking about demonic cases that have actually been exorcised, a lot of times the priest has to go back. Because these people, even though you tell them, "Hey, don't touch that hot stove," they go right back and touch it again, and it happens all over again. It's like a drug and an addiction. And but a lot of people are wanting, they're wanting to see what they can find, see what happens. It's just like Ouija boards. A lot of people go, "Oh, Ouija boards, stay away." I'm going, well, let's see. Parker Brothers make Ouija boards as the devil standing at the end of the production line going, "You're possessed. You're not. You're possessed. You're not." I believe you give what you get.
Yeah.
And if you think something is going to happen, it probably will. To give you an example, I used to let people just tag along with me years and years ago for investigations. And we went to one of these old houses in downtown Louisville, like we saw about earlier, and it looked like something out of the Munsters. I mean, you were literally expecting Spot to come up from underneath the stairs. And they were just redoing it, but it looked terrible. And I got 6 people who I don't know from Adam, and I got to walk down this hallway, and it's a little bitty hallway. You only walk through one at a time. And as we're getting to the kitchen, she's wanting to introduce me to her husband. I'm hearing this noise like, "Wook, wook." And I hit the kitchen, and all I see is blood and gore and splatter going everywhere. And I'm putting the brakes on. And of course, I got all these people behind me going, what is it? Well, some of those people had been so psyched up about going into this house. They saw the blood, they saw the gore. Next thing I hear is running out the back door, and they get hit by a car.
Oh, wow.
All it was their mind was so amped up, though, that, Satan himself was in there. This man was sitting there gutting a deer. That's all the noise was, and all the blood and guts was. But, they were so amped up, it was just, they thought Satan was sitting there doing a satanic ritual or something.
But you got to admit, though, if I'm going in an allegedly haunted house and I walk in a room and I see blood and guts, I'm not going to be thinking a guy's gutting a deer. I'm getting the heck out of there,
Oh, yeah. Usually the first thing I do is put my hand on my gun, but,
Yeah. Other titles you have, Children of the Grave.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, you got to remember this is the early 2000s. And we did full-blown movie productions about ghost hunting. Ghost Hunters came out in 2004. We came out in 2005. And when Spooked came out, it just exploded. So within, a week of that happening, they're going, "Okay, what else you got?" And we're going, and they said, "Let's think about this." So we thought about it, and we said, let's do something about children and ghosts and stuff like that. And at first, we were actually calling it Creepy Kids, and Sci-Fi didn't like that. So we ended up we got a report about these trains, these orphan trains, all in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And I'd never heard nothing about that before. And I love history. And basically, these trains that go to these towns up north, and they had a lot of kids just running around the rail yards and stuff. They'd grab them, Shanghai them out to Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and all the way out to California and sell them. Wow. And and that's just it's true.
This is actually a historic item that you're talking about. This
is actually historic.
Crazy.
When was this happening?
This was late 1800s into the 1930s.
And what were they doing
when we made this in the early 2000s, we found a few people who were still alive that had actually been on the orphan trains. You got to remember, back then in the industrial age, when it first started up, the husband was the breadwinner. The women, all they could do was cook, clean, sew clothes, and that's about it. They couldn't even vote. So if something happened to the father, and back then, good Lord, they had 10, 15 kids for every household, and what are you going to do with all these kids? And what's the mother going to do?
Yeah.
Most of the time she became a prostitute, because she couldn't feed them all, and, pennies for sewing in the factories and stuff. So there's all these kids running around. They just grab them, put them on the train, and take them off. Wow. Yeah. And so up in Indiana, in Crown Point, we found an area that was about 100 foot by about 60 foot of indigent children from orphan trains. And where they'd gone, there was an orphanage up there that had burned down. On the cover of Children of the Grave, there's a little girl there with a hook arm. Well, that hook was actually sent to us from one of the orphans that was on the trains. They'd had their arm ripped off, and it was cheaper to go buy a hook for them to pick up bales of hay than to go get another orphan. So yeah, it's a true thing, and it's historically accurate.
We've been talking with Keith Age. He's known as the rock and roll ghost hunter. Keith, where can people find you on the web or on social media and follow you?
Best place is find me on Facebook under my own name.
Keith, we appreciate you being here. I want to get you back on the show in the future, and I want to talk two subjects. You mentioned the Waverly Sanatorium. I want to talk that, and the Roth House as well. So if we can we schedule you in the future and talk about those two subjects?
Oh, sure. No problem.
Keith, we appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks for being on our show.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Take care.
Todd, it's so interesting. I mean, the things that caught your attention about, the historic, the Waverly, and I was like, I wanted to hear more about the prostitutes and the hook girl.
The hook, yeah.
It's like we're not on the same.
Well, a couple of things did catch my attention. He told a story. He said, how children back in the 1900s through the 1930s, it was hard for the families to support them. I can tell you a true story here. Back in the late 20s, early 30s, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, of course, had children. They during the Depression, they could not support their family. They sent my grandfather off to the Catholic seminary back in Louisiana to study for several years because they knew that he would be educated and they would feed him. And that was apparently a very common practice back in the Depression when they couldn't afford to support the children. So they were looking for alternate ways to take care of their kids.
Well, and as nice a story as that is, I have to tell you, my great-grandmother had lost both her legs and her arms in a thresher accident. And they could not, the family at the time was very poor, could not afford hooks. And they simply tied sticks to, what was left of her arms. And then she died horribly.
I don't know where to go with that, if it's fact or fiction, because we don't want to be disrespectful, but I'm going to go with, I'm going to call what on that. So, okay, thanks, Ike. Another takeaway he talked about, and you guys may be familiar with this, he mentioned the Munsters during one of his stories. And if you've read the headlines lately, there's going to be a new Munster movie. That's the good news. Bad news, Rob Zombie's going to be in charge of it.
Oh, actually, I mean, now to be fair, Rob Zombie's done some pretty decent, hasn't he? I mean, am I wrong about that?
I don't know, man.
I believe. Pete, you probably know this. Hasn't Rob Zombie directed some pretty good movies or some pretty interesting movies?
Yeah, I thought he did really well with the Halloween 1 and 2. What I liked about it is how he got into Michael Myers' head when he went to the insane asylum and tried to understand why he did what he did. I thought it was kind of cool.
Oh, and we were kind of blown off with this, but I mean, when Keith was talking about using these EM meters around bodies of water. Have you done that? And is that your experience?
Yes, I have. And I was going to explain that, and Keith had explained it pretty well too. When I kind of look at things as a parapsychologist would. So I'm thinking that we have energy around us, and when we leave energy in our environment, it creates what's called place memory, and so energy can be measured. And I'm thinking, especially if it's around water, if there was a high emotional release of traumatic events, happy events, or whatever, that EMF can be measured from the EMF detector. That's my thoughts on it. I mean, I have seen it happen as I interview people in haunted locations. That when I say trigger words like death or whatever the case is, high energy words, I have seen EMF detectors get fluctuations on these words, and especially if it happened to the person I'm interviewing. And I can't tell you if it's them emoting when I'm reading it, or if it's from the area of what the place memory is, but there is something there.
But what does it have to do with water, though?
Well, it has. I'm thinking it has to do with what happened around the water, not specifically the water.
It's something I don't think we're ever going to find an answer for, but it's a reoccurring theme that comes up on the show quite often, Well,
we're not going to really know until we get there.
Yeah.
Not with that attitude, we're not.
Yeah, not with that attitude. But whoever gets there first, let's just say whoever gets there first, let the rest of us know if we're still around, that what's going on. So that's the fact we have. If something happens
to me, you two are on the top 5 list that I will haunt.
Oh, thank you. All right, great. Okay. All right. And with that, real quickly, because our next guest is on deck, let's real quickly, I want to talk about one quick news item because Pete posted something on the Full Spectrum Project, our partners on Facebook. Find them, follow them. You'll get some cool articles, but it's a meme of a map. And we've talked about missing persons around the country, especially in parks, national parks. We've had guests on the show talking about that. And the top map in this meme shows mysterious cases of people vanishing literally without a trace. The bottom map, if you overlay it, shows the largest cave systems throughout the country. Real quickly, 10 seconds each. Pete, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, there has been reports of when people see Bigfoot that they have like a real strong sulfur smell. So what's to say that they're not staying in those caves and coming out and grabbing people? That's just my thoughts.
Ike?
I don't have a comment on that, although it reminds me of something else I read, which was the idea that there are a lot of natural faults in the earth, tectonic plates, and there may be some EM energy that comes up out of that, and that there are actually a lot of old roads follow these faults because typically it was easy for animals to move through them. And so that there may be some association between that kind of energy and people who see things, be it ghosts or UFOs or hook babies.
There you go. Yeah, hook babies. We'll leave it on that. Okay, folks, find us on Facebook, YouTube, and we're across social media as the Road Beyond Podcast. Look for us there. Follow us. Spread the word about our show. We really appreciate that. Our next guest, John Zappis, is on deck. You'll want to check this out. He's known as the Haunted Collector. Fascinating stuff. Ike, you're going to be back next time. Pete, you as well?
Yes.
Yes,
they
I
got
am.
nothing better. Yeah, they got nothing better to do. We'll see you all next time on The Road Beyond.